Alright guys, so this is the Sirui 35mm RF mount. I posted a few videos on here already, shot with this lens with either the Komodo or the Canon R5 or the Canon C70. Quick thing on that, I decided to go with the Komodo. Obviously you guys can see it here. I'll make another video about that, lots of haters on it. I'm pretty much in love with this lens. There's some things with it for like the future that I think that they could possibly fix a little bit. But I mean, overall, this is just an amazing setup. So everyone's asking me how I'm getting this mounted onto the Canon R5. There's this company called MTF Services. They're based in the UK. I'm not sure where exactly in the UK. From my understanding, I think they're milling the lens down in the back a little bit and then putting an RF mount on it. So it's not just like an easy slap on kind of thing. They're having to do actual stuff to it. I think the added cost on it is like an extra $200 to $300, which in my mindset to get anamorphic on an RF mount is amazing. So things I'm going to cover in this video is one, why I like anamorphic, two, the 133 versus the 2X stretch, and also just like the lens itself and the mods I've done to it. So let's start with the mods real quick. So most of you guys who are into anamorphic, you most likely have watched Tito's videos. I think that's what his name is. His channel is called Anamorphic on a Budget. He did a video where he opened up the 35 and the 50mm and he puts an oval insert into there. So I bought some of those inserts and I put it in here, and it definitely gives you more of a 2X stretch. Again, we'll go into this in a second. The second mod, if you want to call it mod, it's not really a mod. I have the Tilta Mini Matte Box, and so I usually rock this on here just to try to help control the flares, because the flares are a bit crazy. A couple of the videos I posted, I was doing heavy backlighting and I was getting really low, and so the sun was just blaring straight into the lens. You're gonna get crazy streaks on any anamorphic when you do that. I'm basically aiming the lens straight into the sun. The last video I posted, I kind of got over that and I just filmed it like I would normally film stuff. Way less flares. I actually still try to get more flares in there by trying to get lower angles and stuff and aiming up towards the sun. You don't need to do that. I was just being extra. Having a matte box does help a little bit. With that, I have a Freewell ND. So the cool thing about the Tilta Matte Box is it comes with these adapter rings, and you can still put circular filters within that ring. So I just have an ND filter just tucked right into there. But if I just take this filter off, you can see that's the front right there. You see there is like a bit of a blue tint there. I'm guessing that's what they do to get that blue flare in there. I personally don't really care for the blue flare. I guess I'm neutral on it. I'd rather not have it there, but I don't hate having it there. But the flare is a bit crazy. So I'm dying to get my hands on the 24mm, and I know the flare is gonna be more crazy on there. So a matte box is kind of gonna be a necessity on that guy. These rings come with the 35mm. I don't know if they come with the 24. So let's talk about the desqueezing real quick. And just again, I do have an insert on this lens, and so it's giving us more of a 2X looking stretch bokeh on it. But this is more just about the crops and the compression. So as you can see, on shooting on a 35mm anamorphic lens, now let's put a 35mm spherical lens. When we're at 35, we lose all that extra width on the sides. Now say if we want our subject to be cropped the same, I would have to zoom out to 26mm, and this is just referencing as if our camera didn't have any crop modes. It's just a straight full frame kind of crop ratio, if that makes sense. All right guys, I just had to interrupt my own recording because I was getting way too technical and it just keeps getting worse. So basically, if you have a 35mm anamorphic lens next to a spherical lens and you go to do a widescreen crop on it, you're going to have to crop off a lot of the top and the bottom of the shot. Now, in order to counteract that on a spherical lens, you have to zoom out. When you zoom out, you lose a lot of your focal compression. So just to wrap that all up, on the 35mm anamorphic lens, we're getting a 35mm vertical while getting a 26mm wideness. And again, this is for a 1.33x stretch. Now, I also want to test the Sigma 18 to 35, but with VidAtlantic's oval filter. I love this thing. Stop down the lens. You do get vignetting, so I can't use it on all my work. So as you see with this side-by-side, with that oval insert, the bokeh looks super similar. Now we still have the same crop issue here. Once we go into a widescreen mode, we're losing the subject in the crop. If I'm shooting a project and they want a widescreen, I would preferably like to shoot on anamorphic just because the overall look and everything. But if they need it to be like a 2x1 or a fuller crop, then I'll probably stick with the Sigma with the oval insert. Now again, the issue is once you close down the aperture on here, you do start getting vignetting. So I wouldn't go past like f2 or maybe f2.8 depending how much of a crop you're getting. But anything below that, you're gonna get heavy vignetting. There's ways in DaVinci that you can counteract that, but the footage never looks as clean with that vignetting. So that's the only downside is strictly just the vignetting. So the reasons I like Anamorphic. First, let's start off with the separation. So in my opinion, I know personally for me and a lot of people, our eyes are kind of confused by it. If you guys lightly study like how our brains and eyes work, our eyes are basically just like a tunnel and our brain processes everything. So this is where my color theory and everything comes down from. So if you look at your hand from this distance, you'll see that we have bokeh in the background, right? That bokeh is very creamy and just like really natural and more spherical looking. Now anamorphic bokeh, that waterfall bokeh, it looks different. It looks unnatural almost, but beautiful. It's like more painterly, I would say. So again, in my head, my theory, in my personal opinion, that makes the eye focus a little bit more, or your eyes kind of focus, look at the overall frame, more like a painting rather than just staring at the subject. Like I want you to focus on the subject, but I also want you to study the whole frame and to see what the whole story is within that frame. And on top of that, say if you're shooting at a 2.8 on a spherical lens, you have that beautiful bokeh, right? Now say if you shoot at 2.8 anamorphic, your subject is separated off the background even more just because that waterfall effect really distorts the subject from the background, I would say. So even when you're shooting like f4, f5.6, the subject will still pop off the background a little bit more just because of that bokeh being distorted in the background. Background. And last but not least, I think they say that the equivalent focal length of our eyes is 50 millimeters. So that might be true for like the focal distance, if that makes sense. If you really pay attention to your peripheral vision, it almost like my hands are parallel to my head right now and I can still see my hands. I don't think a lot of people really pay attention to peripheral vision and they don't really take into the whole perspective of it, you know? Like I feel like I have a 180 degree view right now. So when you're shooting on a 50 millimeter on like a photo sensor, our crop's more like this. Like that's all we're seeing. I still have all this over here that I can see. And so again, in my head, basically, anamorphic is more relative to what our natural eye sees. The hard part is in movie theaters, we have a giant screen. And so when we're looking at that, our peripheral vision can really take in the full screen. Now, when we're at home and we're viewing widescreen aspect ratios, it's not as impactful just because we're looking at from here. And then when we're shooting like a 2x1 or like a 1x85, it's a little more bigger. So it's kind of a give and take kind of thing. But just overall, anamorphic has a wider look to it. So guys, that's my review on the Sirui 35 Sirui. I don't know how to say it. But yeah, this lens feels like a tank. It's nice and compact. Yeah, the streaks are just a little bit too crazy for my taste, but I can live with it for the overall anamorphic look that I get from it. And again, shout out to VinAtlantic for having such an amazing little invention there. Also, shout out to Tito at Anamorphic on a budget for the insert. It kind of steps this lens up to the next level, honestly. RF mount, MTF services, hit them up, just Google search them. I'll put a link down in the description. But yeah, guys, stay tuned for a Komodo Red Raw versus Log and why you guys are all wrong about that. Peace.